to know I have to admit people in. So if I'm like presenting and suddenly have to stop for a second, it's because I got to pop up letting people into the meeting. All right, so welcome and good morning. Happy Saturday, everyone. My name is Michaela Sinclair, and I'm joined today by Dorothy Pernolo, and we're both super excited to have you today at Build Your Own Website, No Code Required, which is presented by Products by Women. And this workshop is one of a culmination of workshops that is being put on as part of Products by Women's inaugural STEAM Together Week 2021, which has been a full week dedicated to skill-based workshops to help women level up and pick up STEAM skills to help them go further in their career or launch their own businesses. So far we've had 9 workshops, 3 panels, 1 fireside chat. So it's been a really productive and exciting week. And over the past week, we've had partners and speakers from some of these companies and many more. And for those of you who are attending your first Products by Women event, welcome. And who is returning, welcome to you too. We're a diverse global community offering skill-based personal development, mentorship, and job opportunities for women in tech. And our focus for 2021 is to support and uplift women-led ventures, democratize knowledge and education that reduces parity in tech and pay, and to re-engage women back into the workforce. And so some of the ways we're doing that is through offering free workshops like this one that you're attending right now. And so if you want to continue engaging with us, one way you can do that is keep checking out our events. Here's 2 of our upcoming events, and you can find them on our productsbywomen.com website. Also, if you're a writer or you know other friends who might be writing some interesting articles, definitely invite them to share them with us and with our community. You can send them to info@productsbywomen, and we'd love to consider featuring some of your writing. We also offer skill-based mentorship. So if you're looking for a mentor or if you have skills that you want to share, definitely get in touch with us, and we'd love to incorporate you into our mentorship program. And then lastly, if you don't already follow us on social media, definitely check us out on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, where we have lots of recordings from previous events and workshops on YouTube, LinkedIn, and IG and Twitter. We're always sharing like what upcoming events are and other inspiration and featuring members of our community. If you haven't joined our growing Slack community yet, definitely check that out. You can do that by going to our website where there's a link. And for anything else, feel free to email us at info@productsbywomen. So without further ado, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about myself. I am going to be starting as an associate UX designer on Monday at iShares, so I'm super excited after working as a freelancer for a year in UX. And I have a background in international relations, music, events, and marketing. And I started building websites in 2015 when I took an HTML and CSS course at General Assembly. And then I started helping my friends and independent musicians I knew build their own professional websites on platforms like WordPress and Squarespace. And one just fun fact about me is that I walked the Camino de Santiago in 2015 for 5 weeks by myself. So now I'm going to hand it over to Dorothy.
Thanks, Michaela. Hi, everyone. My name is Dorothy. I go by she, her pronouns. This is my first event speaking with Products by Women, so I'm super excited to be here, and thanks for all of you for joining us today. So just a little bit about me is I'm a freelance UX UI designer, and I'm actually currently a design apprentice at a startup called The Loop. We highlight the work of female and non-binary photographers and connect them with brands to create custom content, so very exciting. I come from a non-traditional background to UX and design. I actually started out in film and video production, doing like set design and video editing. And then I transitioned into the museum field and worked a lot in very like front-facing membership service roles before pivoting to UX. And in terms of my experience with no-code platforms, I've helped to build websites for startups and nonprofits across multiple platforms, including Wix and WordPress, as well as my own various portfolios. And just a little fun fact about me is that I'm actually also a street photographer. So I spent a year of my life photographing different Chinatowns in every city that I went to. And so just kind of getting into what we're going to be covering today, just wanted to give all of you a brief rundown of what we'll be going over. So first off, we're going to touch on how to get started on your website, talking a little bit about storytelling and defining a purpose and an audience. And then we're going to move into bringing that website to life, discussing which platform is going to be best for you, sketching and organizing your content, as well as creating a visual style. Michaela is going to be doing a demonstration for all of us on Squarespace today of how to apply some of the things that we talk about when building your site. And then finally, we're going to wrap up any final questions with Q&A. So before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of things, we wanted to open up the workshop with a quote that we felt might give all of you a glimpse into what the reality is like of building and designing a website. So here we have a quote from Abraham Lincoln. "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." So what does this mean? Essentially, that in any task, the foundation of our ability to achieve our goals is going to be preparation. And the process of building a website is truly no exception to this. There might be an assumption that building a website on a no-code platform, such as WordPress or Squarespace, might not need the same amount of preparation, since these platforms typically provide users with templates to get you started. But let me ask you, how do you know what template is going to be the best fit for the purpose of your website? What is the purpose of your website? Who is your audience? And so these are some questions that we're going to be diving a bit deeper into and that we really invite all of you to start thinking about as you prepare to build your own site. Now, in the user experience field, we tend to follow a process model called the UX Double Diamond, which intends to act as a roadmap for how we approach and solve problems. And so you can see here on the bottom that the Double Diamond is divided into 4 stages. We have discover, define, design, and deliver. Now, the first diamond consists of the 2 stages, discover and define. And those stages are really about understanding the problem space that you're trying to enter with your site, as well as who your audience might be. And so this is where research is really going to play a huge hand in the process. Whether you're trying to build like an e-commerce site or a portfolio to show off your work, it's really important in these beginning stages to do as much research as you can to ensure that you'll be designing the right thing. And, some examples of research can simply just be like browsing other people's portfolios to start getting an idea of what you might want your site to look like, doing some research on the market or taking a look at your competitors' sites to understand what the standard features might be, or interviewing some prospective users, which we highly recommend, to learn more about what they might expect from a site like yours and what their needs and goals are. So really, the more information you have, the more insights that you gather, that will only help you to have a stronger foundation for your project and also to steer you in the direction of what to do next. And so some essential questions that we'd like for all of you to think about and to define as you gather your insights and information are, first off, what is the purpose of the site that you want to build? Why are you building a site in the first place? Is it to write about your niche hobby and connect with others? Is it to promote your work and showcase your business? Different websites are going to have different purposes depending on who their intended audience is. And so whatever that intention may be for you, having a clear purpose to your website will be really instrumental in helping to define the answer to the next question of who is your audience? Now, how I like to think about a website sometimes is that there's a specific person out there with a specific problem looking to fill a specific need. They came from somewhere, whether that's Google or they were referred, but by coming to a website, they're looking to try and gather information and solve a certain problem. But who are these people? And is every person coming to a website looking to achieve the same thing? Or could you have multiple types of users? The answer is yes. You can have a wide variety of users, each looking to achieve different goals on your website. And so this is where research methods like user interviews are really crucial. The more you can actually talk to people and learn about what your audience wants or needs, the better that you'll be able to identify those different types of users and what problems they're trying to solve. Which brings us to, what are the needs, behaviors, goals, and pain points of your audience? What are your users trying to accomplish on your site? What will they need in order to reach those goals? And what might be preventing them from doing so? And so this is where empathy and being able to put yourself in the shoes of your audience is really essential. Being able to understand a user's experience, their behaviors and psychology, and then catering to that with your site will be extremely helpful in turning visitors into prospects or customers. And then lastly, what do you want people to do on your site? What is the call to action? And this is kind of an extension of the purpose. Once you've defined that purpose for your site, what tangible actions or path or functionality will you give your audience to help achieve that purpose? And so these are just a few questions that we feel like are a really great starting point for all of you to just begin thinking about before heading into the design stage and building things out. Again, the more prepared you are ahead of time about what you'll be building, the better informed you'll be when making decisions like choosing a platform or a template and what's going to be the best suited for the needs of your website. And so now I'm going to hand it off to Michaela, and she's actually going to go over how she approached these questions when building her own portfolio website.
Great. Thank you, Dorothy. So building on what Dorothy just said, I'm going to illustrate briefly just how I answered the questions we presented to you when I created my own personal portfolio site. So for example, to answer the question of what was the purpose of my portfolio site, it was to demonstrate and showcase my UX design work. And to who was my audience? It were my audience that I defined for my website were recruiters and potential hiring managers. And I made this decision because I knew that through the hiring process, I had to appeal both to the gatekeepers for job positions, which are generally recruiters, and I needed to get past them. So I needed to think about what their needs were. And I also had to make sure that my website was up to snuff and impressive enough for hiring managers to want to talk to me. So then I also needed to define the needs, behaviors, goals, and pain points of my audience. So taking into consideration, if my audience is hiring managers, what are their needs and goals and behaviors and pain points? And so the way I gathered this information was just by doing several informational interviews, coffee chats. I had them look at and review my portfolio. I went to workshops or recruiter panels or hiring manager panels. And that's how I was able to gather this information to understand that if I'm a hiring manager, for example, I need to be able to just quickly look at a site and be able to evaluate a potential UX designer's skills. And then I also learned by talking to them or going to workshops that they often have to look at like 50 or more portfolios in any given day. And they're often maybe just like scrolling through it on their phones, maybe less so these days because they're not all commuting, but they might just be looking at it on their phone. So that's something to consider, is what devices are your audience using to access your website. And then I also learned through just conversations that a lot of hiring managers don't spend more than 2 to 3 minutes on portfolio sites. So I had to consider, how do I show in less than like 3 minutes that I can do the work? And also some pain points that came up through the portfolio reviews I did was that originally my layout and navigation wasn't really super up to their expectations. And it wasn't as mobile friendly as it could be. So I ultimately decided to change the platform I was building my website on because I was facing some difficulties with Wix, and I swapped out and completely redid my website on Webflow. So that's just an example of how I answered these questions of what's my purpose who is my audience, and what are their needs, goals, behaviors, and pain points. And then lastly, what did I want people to do on my site? I wanted these hiring managers and recruiters to view my resume and browse my portfolio. So I made sure, as you can see on this mobile view of my site, that my call to action buttons were above the fold and clearly visible. And so that's just something for you to keep in mind as you're thinking about what site are you building? Are you building it for your business? Is it your own personal blog? Like, what do you want people to do on your site? Who are those people? And that's just, this is an example of how I did it for my own personal site. So we're just going to pause right here. And if there are any questions, we'll take one or two before we move ahead. So if anyone has a question, feel free to type it into the chat. And yes, Anurup, we will be sharing the slides later. So no worries about that. So any questions? No? Okay. Well, great. And if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat.
Cool.
So we can keep moving.
Yeah. So now that you all have a better understanding of what to consider getting started on your site, we wanted to revisit the double diamond that we touched on a little earlier and speak more about that second diamond, which consists of these stages: design and deliver. And so if the first diamond was about designing the right thing, the second diamond is really about making sure that we're designing things right. And so this is part of the process where we take all of that information that we defined in those beginning stages and start to get hands-on and ideate on potential designs and solutions. So just for example, like sketching out pages of your website, organizing your information, your content, creating some wireframes or blueprints. During this stage, it's important to try and experiment with a couple of different solutions or designs. And I would even highly recommend getting feedback on those sketches before you start building. There's kind of a constant theme of feedback throughout this whole process, which you'll probably pick up on. And from there, it's really just about selecting the best solution for your purpose and then finally building that out. And so again, we'll go over a little bit more of some of those things that I just mentioned. But first, I'm actually going to pass it back off to Michaela, and she's going to go over choosing a platform for your website and some of the pros and cons of each.
Great. Thank you, Dorothy. So as I kind of started to show and discuss in my own personal example of my own portfolio website, is that I originally started building it on Wix. And so as you can see with this person, like there's so many platforms out there. This is only 5 of them, but there's other things like Simplice, there's other things like Adobe. You can, like, there's so many options. So for you, it's like, how do you figure out what's the right platform for you? And I agree, it's really difficult. So that's why we asked you to put in the work before you even pick your platform. First, define what we went over in the beginning, because that will really help decide what's the best platform to serve your needs, and also to just evaluate what are your skills and what can you do well and what can't you do well. And that can also help you decide which platform is best for you. So for example, with Wix, the reason I picked it originally was that it had a lot more creative license and flexibility than Squarespace. But what I came up against was that what Squarespace has is you don't have to worry about mobile responsiveness and having a responsive site, because the way that Squarespace is structured, it just takes care of that for you and you don't have to think about it. So if you're someone who doesn't really want to worry about, oh no, like, is my site going to look just as good on mobile as it is on a tablet and a desktop, then I would totally recommend going with Squarespace, which is what I'm going to be doing the demo in today. If you have like 0 skills, as soon as you just learn the little kind of ins and outs of Squarespace, you definitely can easily build a site, which is what I'm hopefully going to share with you today. And then another website building platform that I would recommend if you have a little bit more skills and understanding of like HTML or CSS is Webflow, which is what my portfolio site is currently built on. It has a lot of flexibility, a lot of powerful like back-end stuff, and you can really get in and style it any way you want. But again, the con of Webflow is that if you're not familiar and you don't want to get into the nitty gritty of CSS and kind of more coding things, then I wouldn't necessarily recommend Webflow for beginners. WordPress is really great and it has a lot of flexibility as well. And there's so much more you can do with it. But again, if you're a beginner, I wouldn't recommend it. And Shopify is really not terrible either. And I would definitely recommend that if you have an e-commerce site. If you're trying to build out a shop, then I would probably consider Shopify over Squarespace or Wix or Webflow, but they are trying to be competitive with them. So definitely keep that in mind. That's where knowing exactly what you want to do with your site is really important because that will help guide you. And so just to kind of wrap this up, this slide is that Squarespace is super easy. It does have its limitations. You have to know going in that you're probably not going to get the site exactly the way you want it to look because it doesn't let you do certain things visually because it's trying to prevent you from making certain mistakes as a designer. So it has its pluses and minuses, but that's all I really have to say for now about platforms. And I'll hand it back to Dorothy.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I'm actually in the process of moving my portfolio over from Wix to Webflow. And so I think also just kind of touching on and building on what Michaela just said is that like your platform might change as like your needs or your users' needs or your brand's needs evolve. So definitely just like it's important to kind of learn a little bit more about the ins and outs of the platforms to kind of avoid a headache later on. And so just kind of touching more on something that I mentioned a little bit earlier when talking about the design phase was about sketching. And kind of in the vein of more preparation, a really low stakes way to start designing is honestly just to take pen or pencil to paper and start sketching out some of your pages. You don't have to be an artist for this. If you can draw shapes and lines, then you're all good. The purpose of this is not to make like an artistic masterpiece. Sketching is something that we do in the UX field regularly as a way to just communicate our ideas. And that's really what we're trying to do with that. And also to experiment with as many solutions as possible. And also doing some initial sketching will be really helpful because from there, you'll essentially have like a blueprint for what you want to build as you decide on a platform and a template to accommodate that. So I've just provided a little sketch that I did previously with showing you kind of like shapes and lines and how to communicate your ideas just through like basic geometry. And another thing that's really helpful when ideating is to create a visual sitemap of how you might want to structure the information on your site. So when starting out on this, I suggest reflecting back on those first 4 questions that we asked of, what is your purpose? Who is your audience? What are their needs? What is the call to action? A sitemap has to consider everything about users and their goals when browsing your website, what content is going to be the most attractive to them, and the paths that they might take to consume that. And so like the simplest way to start doing this is to start drawing blocks to represent your pages, and then you can break it up from there. So in this example, I'm not sure if you all can see because it's a little bit light on the ink, but the first block up top is the homepage. This person started off with the homepage. And then from there, they've expanded on that and have decided that the 3 boxes in the middle, they say about us, portfolio, and our services, those 3 blocks in the middle are going to be the primary pages within that homepage. And then from there, you can see that they've continued to break it down and organize what information is going to be within those primary pages and so on and so forth. And so doing this will be really helpful for you to understand the ecosystem of your website, how content connects to each other, and then how to prioritize and structure that information based on your purpose and user needs. And then one of the last things that we wanted to touch on before heading into the demo is about deciding on a visual style for your site. So if you haven't already, this is a really great opportunity to start thinking about branding, whether that's your own personal brand or your business's brand, and how you might want to communicate that visually with your site. For me, it's helpful to just start off thinking about like what are some adjectives that describe like the vibe or the messaging that you want to express. So for example, for one of my projects that I worked on, my team and I were inspired by a light airiness and a contemporary aesthetic for our design. And so understanding what we were trying to communicate ahead of time really helped us to determine our color palette and our style guide accordingly. Another great way to explore this is creating a mood board of things that inspire you or your brand. And from there, you can use any of these great resources that we've provided here to help you narrow down your visual style. So for fonts, we have Typewolf and Fonts in Use. Both are really great resources for helping you find the perfect font combo and also showing real examples of typefaces in use or in the wild. For color and choosing a palette, both Adobe Color Wheel and Coolers are both awesome. I've used both before pretty regularly. Coolers is especially fun because it can generate different color schemes to help get you inspired. And then Adobe Color can be a bit more in-depth. So it can help you choose a palette based on like color theory and harmony. Say if you want something with complementary colors or split complementary. So it's a little bit more granular, but we definitely recommend both of these to get you started. And then finally, we have Unsplash, which is kind of like a database or search engine of high resolution royalty-free stock images that you can use in your mockups as placeholder images. I love Unsplash. You can literally search for anything and everything is totally free and downloadable. I use it all the time for projects. So highly recommend checking it out, especially if you want to showcase images of people in action or like landscapes and you don't want to have to deal with copyright and royalty issues and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely recommend any of these resources. They're really excellent for beginners. And I am gonna hand it off one last time to Michaela, and she's going to give us a bit of a demo on like Squarespace 101 and how to get set up and apply some of the things that we just talked about.
Awesome, thank you, Dorothy. And I do see we have Jennifer, you sent in a question. I might just quickly answer that since we've both tried out different platforms. Can we talk about switching pains from one platform to the other? There are always pains with switching, but are any really terrible with switching or migrating? Yeah, I mean, the pain is just you have to completely rebuild your site. So it's just a lot of hours. You already put in so many hours on your past site. And then you have to do it again. But hopefully the second time, you already know your structure, you already know your style, so you don't have to put in as much effort into that. So I would say the pain of switching platforms is really just the extra hours you have to put in with building. What do you think, Dorothy?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, like when I was building out my portfolio on Wix, I mean, I spent so many endless days and hours on that. But I think at that time, the purpose of that was just to get a portfolio out so I can start applying for jobs. And now that I've kind of, been in that game a little bit longer, it's really about wanting to elevate the portfolio. But, I'm not the best at like CSS or HTML. So like that I'm doing Webflow now, it is a bit of a learning curve. But I think that like not having to worry about the responsiveness constantly and like having to like fix little glitches that keep coming up and you don't know why that's happening, which happens a lot with Wix, is worth it for me in the end. So it is pain, it is extra work, but hopefully by the second time you already, again, have a blueprint for what you want to build. It's really just about learning the ins and outs of the new platform. Right.
Yeah, and so hopefully just one moment, I'm gonna switch what I'm sharing so that I can show you so I can start to demo, and then we'll take more of your questions after this demo. So as I said, I'm gonna walk you through over the next 15 minutes or so how I would just start building a website on Squarespace, and hopefully this will help you just kind of know how to get started. So definitely, if you have questions, write them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. We'll save like 10 or 12 minutes at the end. So right now what you're seeing is my dashboard. Like I said, I run other people's websites, so I see some other websites here. And I'm just working from the assumption that I'm rebuilding my portfolio. So that's kind of the lens I'm going through right now as I do this demo for you. So I click create a website, and then because I'm creating a portfolio, let's say I'll pick a personal CV, and then I can see all of the different template options that they have here on Squarespace. So they really help you with different template options, and then it can get confusing once you pick your template, like which one to go with and how to get started and swap it out. I just want to say one thing that bugs me about Squarespace, just to be aware of, is they have these like huge like images with text over them as like landing pages. And just to be aware, that can make it really hard for readability and accessibility on your site. So I like to kind of just keep that in mind when I'm picking templates or building a site, is you want to keep in mind, like, how readable is it? Like, is it easy to read that text if it's like white over a photo? Not usually. So for this demo, I'm just going to pick this template because it's really nice and just plain and you can easily read it. And I already have like a Word document out where I outlined what I want to do for my website. And so just today, stop, I don't want all this help. Okay, so when you pick your template, you see that there's over here, there's a left nav of all these options, and you're mostly gonna be working in your pages. So this is where it tells you.
I don't think that it's on the page that you're talking about, actually.
Oh, no, okay, thank you. Thank you for calling that out. I'm gonna stop presenting and represent. Okay, so I picked this one. Now you can see?
Yes.
Okay, great. So left nav. So now you see here, there's pages, design, commerce, marketing, scheduling, analytics, you can read. So with pages, just so you know, there's a section called main navigation and not linked. And you'll see that the home is not linked because generally just this is a pattern, is usually like your site title or your logo is going to usually take users back to the home page. So you don't need home to be up here in main navigation because it's already in navigation. And then we also see contact me and blog, which is just part of this website. And then for this one I picked, it's a lot of just text, and this person put their actual, like, a placeholder for what their resume could be. But what I'm going to show you is I'm going to change this to meet the needs of what I need, which, for example, is I don't like contact me. Maybe I just want to change it to contact, for example. And blog, I don't love the word blog, so I might change that just to be writing. And then I think I'm going to want to put another page for my portfolio. So if I wanted to add another page to the main navigation, I can do that by clicking this plus sign and picking either blank page or page layout. And they also have things for if I wanted to create a blog page, a store page, a portfolio, events, and so forth. And so because I want to create a portfolio, it's cool. They already have something for a portfolio. And so then they have these templates you can choose from to add. And so I'm just going to pick that one. It looks nice. And I'll just call it portfolio. So that's super easy. Now I have almost the main navigation I want. I don't really like contact me. I'd prefer it to say contact. And I'd rather blog say writing. So how I'm doing this is I just double click it and I can change the name of what it is. And then if I go back to the home page and look at it, you can edit it by selecting this. And so, for example, then you can see now that I picked the editor, you can add a section by clicking on this. You can change the text by double clicking. So like, let's say, Michaela, that doesn't look good. Michaela Sinclair is a UX designer based in New York City. And then I can just change that and delete, and it's super easy. I don't really like all of these extra sections, so I'm just going to delete them by picking this trash button. So it's really easy to just remove sections if you don't want them. And for example, this get in touch is nice. It's great because I will want people to get in touch, but it looks a little big for my taste. So I'm just going to make it smaller by selecting a different heading size, which when you double click it, it brings you this editing bar. And so I selected heading 3. And so right now, this is what my homepage is looking like. I do want another call to action. Like I would like someone to look at my resume. So you can see there's a plus button here that's really responsive. So I'm just going to add a button. And so when I click the plus sign, it gives you options of what kind of blocks you want to add. And so it's nice. There's a button block. And I'm just going to say view resume. And here I can either add a link to my resume or I can upload a file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to upload a file to my resume. And I just go into my own personal documents and look for my resume. And then I'm just going to put my resume there. And it uploads the file for you, which is great. And you can, this switch lets you decide whether you want it to open a new tab or window or just stay on the same window. So then I save that. And this looks okay, but personally, I'd like it to be left aligned. So you can pick, like, as you have the button selected, you have a design toggle. So I can just pick if you want left aligned, center aligned, right aligned. And you can make it small, medium, or large, depending on what you're going for. And maybe you like square buttons, but maybe you don't. I personally, maybe I want to do a more rounded button. So how would I do that? Well, the way I would do that is I go into the design. So I go back to the left nav, I pick design, and they have a button option. And so that you can, they only let you have three options. You could have square, you can have rounded, or you could have a pill button. I personally prefer that look. That's what I'm going for this demo. So I'm going to go with that. And to kind of delve into the design too, if you don't like the colors, you also can change the colors on your site, and they really set it up really nicely and make it pretty easy for you. So like, let's say I'm not really into this color palette. Maybe I prefer a different look. So I could pick that, but I can try that one out, or all of these different options and see which one meets kind of like what Dorothy was saying before. What is it I'm going for? What's my look, the style? Maybe I'm not really a pink and red person. Maybe I'm looking for more of a blue look. And there's a whole lot of theory on color theory too, on like what different colors mean. So you could also kind of explore that for yourself too. So let's just say that I picked blue. I'd rather go with the blue palette. So that was a really easy switch. And also, if you don't like the fonts that they have, they did a lot of work for you too, where you can actually switch your font as well. But I like the font choice, but just so you know, you can go into fonts, you can pick switch, and they have all different font options that you can explore and see like what is the right font for you. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. And so this is what my homepage is looking like so far. And another thing that I had to think about is, okay, so they could access my portfolio through here, but maybe I also want people to be able to see just a preview of my portfolio. So I'm going to add another section. And how I did that was, you can see there's an add section button. So I hit that, and there are different types of sections you can add here. And because I want more of a gallery of my projects, I'm going to look at the options for gallery. And then it's really up to you, like what speaks to your style, what you think would be easiest for people to navigate, and go from there. And so maybe I'm not quite sure if I like this gallery. I want to see what image options there are. And because I want to be able for people to see my project, but also maybe see what, like, a description of it. And so I think I might pick, let's see, let's go with this. This is easier. So I just want people to see all of my project options. And so then what I would do is I would edit this gallery. And how I do that is I just click on this image that comes up, and you can edit the image. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. Well, yeah, you can actually edit images within, but you can add images. You can upload your own images here. And I don't have my images saved right now, but that's basically how you can do it. Is you can delete the images if you don't want them from the gallery, and then add your own by this plus sign. And something to keep in mind with images too is you just want to make sure that they're not very large files, because that will increase the load time of your website. So just beware of the size of the images files that you're putting onto your website, because you want to make sure your website load time is pretty quick, because that affects how your website is going to be indexed on Google. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that as well, about search engine optimization and things to be aware of to make sure that your website shows up as you want it to on Google. And then the other thing I'm just going to show you is, like, let's say I want to edit my site header, because right now it just says edit site title. So I do that by just hovering over it. I can edit that, and then it says site title and logo. So I can just change it to be my name. I don't have a logo, so I'll just leave it as my logo, my name. And then, as you can see up here, it also added some social icons from this, but maybe I don't have a Twitter account, for example. So I try to figure out where those are showing up. So I figured out that they're in elements and social links. And so I'm going to edit the social links, and I don't want Twitter. So I just click on it and I remove it. And something to consider too is, like, do I want people on my professional website to see my Instagram account, or would I rather link it to my LinkedIn account? So just keeping in mind, like, for example, I don't necessarily have a professional Instagram account, so maybe I would just delete all the social links. So really think about what you want to link out, where you want it to show up on your site, and what you want people to do from your site. So the last thing I want to show you to keep in mind as you're setting up your website is search engine optimization. So Squarespace makes that really easy. And what that is, I'll show you right now, is you kind of are editing what's called the metadata, and what large search engines are going to be, like, pulling and indexing when they're looking at what websites are out there. And so you want to make sure that you're showing up on the web the way you want to be showing up. So how I get to this place to edit the search engine optimization is there's a little gear icon next to these pages. And so for each page, you're going to want to type in your own SEO information. And so they have a whole tab here. And so I'm going to want to edit my SEO site settings. And so you can add your own keywords. And this, what they mean by keywords is, like, what keywords do you want to show up for when people are searching it? So, like, maybe your website is selling some type of product, like a skincare product. And so, like, you want to show up whenever people are searching for, like, organic skin, like 100% like sustainable skincare products, then you're going to want to go into your SEO on your website and make sure that you're putting those types of keywords into your SEO. So when Google is looking for sites on the website, that sites on the web, that your website will hopefully index for that. So that's just like the little demo I wanted to do for you. I know this is very basic, but I wanted to kind of show you how you can get started. And I'm just going to stop now and take any questions that people may have. So let's see. Dorothy.
Yeah, so let's see. What are your recommendations for a website platform that includes blogs and shop page? I mean, I have actually heard a lot, even though we've kind of not maybe said the best things about it today, but I've actually heard that Wix is a really great platform for e-commerce. Wix, you know, has a lot of additional apps and plugins that you can install, including stuff specifically for e-commerce that are really helpful. And you can also create a blog within that. Again, it's really just like keeping in mind like the mobile responsiveness and just responsiveness across all channels and stuff like that. I think Squarespace as well. I've seen a lot of websites that use Squarespace as their primary e-commerce platform, and they're also able to link out blogs. But what do you think, Michaela?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen Squarespace, they're constantly improving and they're trying to make their like what they offer even better. So they keep adding things based on what people are requesting. So I would say it's probably a good option because you can easily create your own blog and shop. Another one, like I think I mentioned before, is Shopify. It has a really nice e-commerce flow and setup. So I would maybe look into those, Anjali. Are there some resources that help us identify color and font combinations as per what is your theme, as it sometimes becomes overwhelming to choose the combination when you're designing a social media website or e-commerce? That is very true. Like we kind of shared in a couple slides ago, and we'll share in our slide deck, I really like Font Wolf, and he has a few like things on his site that you could buy some of his products where he actually recommends like free font pairings and what he recommends as font pairings. So I bought like that thing from his website, but he also has a lot of free information that helps you really figure out what fonts go well together, because the typography you choose can be very challenging to pick what looks best. But you also want to make sure you pick a font that will represent you as you want it to. So I would say definitely check out what we're going to share out on our slides for more information. And there's the other site we're going to share about, which is Fonts in Use, which shows you how fonts are used by other big brands or creative people, which really helps.
Yeah, I'm going to drop an additional link right now in the chat called type.io. This website has come up a lot when I've Googled like what's a good font that goes with, I don't know, Times New Roman or Avenir. And then similarly, it'll show you lots of examples of fonts that really pair well. It'll show you like websites and different products and resources that use this font combo. So just like another really great resource that I've personally used as well.
Yeah, and there are also some great, I guess, what are they called? Like Chrome extensions. There's this one called What Font. You can add the What Font Chrome extension. So if you're on other sites, you can explore what fonts people are using on their website. And that way you can also, just by really exploring what other people are doing, that's how you can kind of develop your own skill and decisions, because it's really just seeing what are people doing well and just drawing inspiration from that.
Totally. I also highly recommend that Chrome app. It's really easy just to kind of like hover and, like you said, like Michaela, just like finding inspiration.
Yeah, so it's called What Font. I'll add a link to that as well if you want to do that. And then another question I see is, do you need to buy the internet name before building the website? I'm guessing you mean do you need to buy the domain name? You don't have to buy your domain name before building your website, but it's definitely worth checking out if that domain name is available before you build your site with the brand that you want, because if your domain name's not available, then you might have to explore other options or pay a lot of money to get that domain. Yeah, what do you think, Dorothy?
Yeah, especially like friends of mine that like have a little bit more like I don't know if the word is typical names, but like names that, you know, are like pretty common. Like a friend of mine, his name is James, and you know, his last name is also pretty common, so he wasn't able to get that. And even like James dash, you know, last it wasn't available, so he had to kind of go get a little creative and go with like uxbyjames.com, you know. So I think that in terms of just getting that security that you'll get the domain that you want, it's just always better to do it earlier than later.
Yeah, and what I would also recommend, because we've talked about how, you know, we've built sites on one platform and then we moved it to another platform, is that originally, for example, I bought my domain from Squarespace. But if you do that and then you want to build a site on another platform, you have to go through a whole process to uncouple your domain and transfer it to some other product and then put it onto your new website. So I would recommend, if you're going to buy a domain, don't buy it through Wix or Squarespace, but buy it through something like Google Domain or GoDaddy or some other third-party domain provider, because then it's a lot easier if you change platforms to change your domain.
Yeah.
So that's really something to keep in mind as well, is while Squarespace, Wix, and everything tries to make it easier for you, if you want to leave them, it's harder because if they own your domain, it takes like at least a week to get your domain out of their domain.
Yeah, I actually had that exact same experience where I bought my domain name with Squarespace for like a photography portfolio I did earlier. And then when I was trying to build out my Wix one, it actually like, something like lesson learned is it actually delayed the process of me being able to get my portfolio out, because it took that like week and a half to transfer over. And there was a lot of like emails back and forth and trying to like figure out how to switch it over. So I totally concur with Michaela's point.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions. I see a comment from Nadia about wanting to do a DIY workshop. I think that would be awesome, Nadia. I would just email info@productsbywomen, and then hopefully one of our teammates can get back to you about collaborating. So thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I think we're almost done here. If there are no more questions, I guess Dorothy and I can just wrap it up.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on a Saturday. We super appreciate it, and we hope that, you know, some of the information and resources we gave you were helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say, you know, it's a long process to build your own website, and it can be overwhelming and scary, and it's okay. Luckily, lots of these websites have lots of demo videos. I really learned a lot just by watching a lot of YouTube videos. And honestly, a lot of coders just learn how to code through watching YouTube videos. So if it's taking you a lot of time to figure this out, figure out how to add a page, how to edit a page on whatever platform you choose, just know like that's normal. And it comes with practice. So feel free, if you ever have any questions, you know, feel free to reach out. I'm on like LinkedIn and also Product by Women Slack channel. So I'm always happy to answer questions if I can help you. And I'd be happy to connect. Yeah, I can see people are sharing their LinkedIn. I don't have my LinkedIn thing available right now, but you can easily find me on LinkedIn under Michaela Sinclair. So again, we will be sharing the slides, and we are going to post the recording from today on Product by Women's YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. And I think that's it. Thank you everyone for coming and for participating in this week's STEAM Together Week put on by Products by Women. So definitely connect and stay tuned for more awesome workshops.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, and see you later.